calculations such as DPS. And in Starcraft 2, not only the damage per second matters, but the damage per shot as well as how often a unit fires matters as well. And it's great to just lay out all these different numbers for every single unit in the game in order to balance your game. Another great thing about spreadsheets is that they're great for analyzing build times and costs. We don't try to equalize the costs of different tech choices, and we also don't try to make every production building needed for every one of the races symmetric, but we do try to make note of all these numbers so that the balance on these numbers can be perfect. The major downside to spreadsheets is that it actually doesn't take into account a lot of the other variables that are going on in the game, such as pathing, terrain, or strategies, or even micro. And to take these into account, we'll actually look at our other tool.
So we have a tool that's an in-game tool called Make Combat, and this is sort of a debug tool that we can use to create battles very quickly and run tests rapidly to see what's going on. And of course, what's great about this, it's in the software, so it accounts for movement, it accounts for pathing. They can account for a lot of the variables that something like a spreadsheet wouldn't use. Like we often have seen, changing something as small as a unit size, as I'm sure you all know, has a significant impact on how well that unit performs. So you can make a small tweak to the size of the Zealot, quickly use Make Combat, and see what's actually going on. And it also can account for unit costs. Like Starcraft is often balanced for cost, right? We're not balancing unit to unit. We don't care if 7 Zealots beat 7 Marines. That doesn't make any sense. The Zealots cost a lot more. So we can actually set up battles and Make Combat that allow us to test for unit cost to make sure that we're getting it right. So here's an example of Make Combat in action. You can see we're going to type in a command there. We're going to do it for cost, and we're going to speed up the game so we can watch really quickly what's going on. Those Zealots and Stalkers are going to fight those Roaches and Hydras, and as you would expect, it's not going to go very well for our Protoss brothers there. They're going to beat them down. We get a little report there at the end, how many units are left, what percentage is left, what the leftover cost is. And we'll run it again just to make sure that, yeah, this is what's happening, that's what's going on. Let's change it up. Let's put in 10 Immortals instead of 10 those Stalkers. Let's see how it goes. And so as you imagine, this is going much better now for the Protoss, the Immortal being so strong against the Roach. But like everything in StarCraft, a lot of these relationships are very touch and go. And so we want to run it a couple of times to make sure, and we'll run it again just to see what happens. Because of small variations in pathing and small variations in unit target acquisition, suddenly what was an absolute Protoss victory suddenly turns into a narrow Zerg victory. And these are the kinds of relationships we're looking for, because this means terrain and micro will be the deciding factor in this particular battle. So if we talk about, there we go. So Make Combat, of course, we were in love with this tool. This was the greatest tool ever made. We had it. We could just test the game 50 times an hour. We could see whatever we wanted to see, and we could prove to ourselves that everything was great. We were so happy with this. The downside of this tool, of course, is it's sometimes difficult to account for terrain. I mean, you saw that battlefield. When was the last time you were in a battlefield that was that open? Now, we do have some terrain on the debug map, but it's easy to forget to use it as a designer. And the reality is, battles are rarely that perfect. It also fails to analyze the current strategies, what we call the metagame. It fails to analyze what could actually happen in a real battle. Really? 10 Immortals and 10 Zealots? If 4 Mutalisks flew over that formation, those Protoss would be dog meat. I could convince myself with that battle that, oh, hey, look, this is easy for the Protoss. They can counter this with Immortal Zealot. And actually, when you get into a live game, it's a total disaster. This is what we found when we went into beta. We've been using this tool a lot before we went into beta, and when we got to play a lot of games against people of our own skill level, suddenly we're having lots of arguments. We would say, Make Combat says this, and I'm saying, hey, I get it. I can see what Make Combat does too, but I'm telling you, I played last night, and it doesn't work. That's not going to happen. And so the danger of Make Combat, we discovered, was it creates a false sense of security. It makes you believe you know what's going on, and instead of using the other tools, you can start to rely on it to give you proof of what you want to believe. Hey, I know, we've got the answer. It's Immortal Zealot. It's going to stop it every time. And when you get into a game, it's not going to happen. I mean, even look at that scenario I showed you. 10 Immortals. How many robotics facilities did this fictional Protoss player have to put out 10 Immortals at that stage of the game? It's just not practical. And that's why our other tools are so important, and why this is just one small piece of the arsenal we use to try to understand what's going on.
And of course, we have BattleNet stats, and the great thing about this is it's everyone playing the ladder. There's a lot of players who might not post on forums, a lot of great players, but we have all their games on BattleNet. And this takes this objectivity out of what they're doing. A lot of players, if you ask someone, how did your last 30 games go? most players probably couldn't answer that concisely. Even internally, we'll get someone coming up to us saying, man, I can't beat Protoss as Zerg. And, we'll give them some advice, and then we'll go look at their match history, and we'll notice that they actually have a 70 win percentage in that situation. And it's not that they're trying to mislead us or anything like that. It's just players tend to remember their losses a lot more. And it's really hard to think back what happened in a bunch of your last games. So let's take a look at some BattleNet stats, and this is for North America across all leagues. So Terran versus Zerg, we can see that Terrans are edging out Zerg very slightly, 51-49 in favor of the Terrans. Protoss versus Terran, 53-47 in favor of the Protoss, still a really good number for us. And Protoss versus Zerg, 51-49 in favor of the Protoss. So I mean, these numbers all look great to me. I think we're done.
It's perfect.
We can just go home, right?
What could possibly go wrong with these numbers?
Let's see.
But with every other tool that we have, this has a huge downside as well. And the main reason for this is our matchmaker. Our matchmaker does an excellent job of matching two players that are evenly skilled that will go 50-50 against each other. However, the matchmaker doesn't know where the race imbalances are, so it doesn't take this into consideration. So in order for us to use these win percentages as a balanced tool, we actually have to know what the race win percentages are for each matchup when two equal levels players play and not with perfect matchmaking. So to explain how we get this actual number that we use, we have our math genius, Dr. Josh Menke.
Thanks, David. Yeah, exactly. The matchmaker is trying to make sure every player has a 50-50 win percentage, but it's also making sure every race has as close to a 50-50 win percentage as well. And so because of that, we can't really trust those raw race win percentages. So we have come up with an adjusted win percentage that accounts for the skill of the players. And not only that, we can use this to track the metagame day by day, week by week. We can know what Protoss versus Zerg looks like at the top level, at the middle, and at the bottom. And this is a great tool for us to be able to know what the current metagame really is. Now, you're probably all wondering, how is this possible? So to kind of boil this all down, we throw up the calculation here and just let you guys see that and use that whenever you want to understand how we do this.
You guys got that? Seems pretty basic, right?
I got it.
Pretty basic math, I think. Yeah.
Simple stuff.
Seriously, this is how we do it. I didn't throw on the how we handle the different levels of skill, but that'll give you guys a clear idea. Now, let's run through a simple example, though, of how we actually fit that equation there. So let's say we have two players. We've got a Zerg player and a Protoss player. Before the match, we kind of think Bob's probably the better player. We've seen him play other players. We've seen Frank play other players, so we kind of have an idea about their skill. We've also seen Zerg play against Protoss in the past, so we also have an idea that we think, in this case, that Zerg at this point is better than Protoss, slightly. So then we have those two teams play. We observed the results. We saw the Protoss player won the match. And so now we need to change what we think about the skill of both the players and the balance of the matchup.
Yeah,
so
with that cheesy Void Ray Rush, too. That's terrible. That's terrible. I can't believe he did that.
Yeah, we don't take into account how he did that.
It's terrible.
So here we go. Before we thought Bob was better by about 5%, but at the end of that, we're going to slightly update that, change what we think, and now we're thinking maybe Bob's only slightly better than Frank. And before we thought Zerg had a 3% advantage over Protoss, we're going to kind of back that off a little bit now because we just saw Zerg lose a match. And we do this over millions of matches, with hundreds of thousands of players. We don't really update win percentages. We're just showing this to make it easier. It's a much more complicated system than that. But this does give a flavor of how we're able to do this and get these adjusted win percentages that give us a more realistic view of what the race balance is.
So now that we know we have to factor in skill when we're looking at our BattleNet stats, let's look at the adjusted win percentage for North America, again across all leagues. So for Terran versus Zerg, Terrans are still doing pretty close against the Zerg, 51-49. This is a really good number for us. Protoss versus Zerg, 53-47 in favor of the Protoss. Now, a number 55, about 55-45 means there's no statistical evidence of imbalance. If that number starts going closer to 60-40, then that starts getting in our danger zone, and this is a number we definitely want to look at a little bit more. So Protoss versus Terran, what do you know? 60-40. This is definitely a number we're concerned about. So we're going to investigate this a little bit further, and we'll look at Diamond specifically in North America. So for Diamond, we have Terran versus Zerg, 49-51, still a good number. Protoss versus Zerg, 55 to 45. It's borderline, but we still consider